This year, Disney is already starting the celebration of Pixar's first feature film, as this November we're embarking on Toy Story's 30-year anniversary. I'm sure many are aware though, while this film did a great job at putting Pixar on the map in a really big way, it wasn't where the company started out. In fact, a perhaps much bigger anniversary will be next year when the studio celebrates 40 years. In a lot of those early years, they got some contract work through the likes of commercials, but it wasn't until they started releasing short films that the true capabilities of this art form and the artistry at the studio could be put on full display. The Adventures of Andre and Wally B was produced under Graphics Group, though it's been retrofitted into the first of Pixar's shorts. And this was an impactful start for the company, showing how they can give these original computer-generated characters a likeness very akin to classic cartoon characters through movement and expression. This was followed up with Luxo Jr., which was Pixar's first go at giving an inanimate object life, something that would later become a trademark for the studio, and the titular character became a symbol of iconography, becoming a part of the company logo. We got Red's Dream, Tin Toy, and Knick Knack all releasing prior to Toy Story and helping their animation team really get the swing of things, eventually ramping them up for those lengthier productions, while simultaneously increasing the quality and tools within their animation and rendering software. Not only that, this is where the studio's award recognition began, with Luxo Jr. getting nominated for Best Animated Short at the Academy Awards and Tin Toy winning it later on. Some of those earlier ones ended up releasing alongside theatrical releases later on, such as a version of Knick Knack that was a tad bit adjusted. And this became the working system, with eventually every film seeing a brand new original short attached. In my mind, every single one of these was perfect. They all told their own self-contained story, and they were all a little treat before the movie started. For longtime fans of the studio, some of these characters that show up in here are just as iconic as their feature film counterparts. And some, like Jerry, would become a film counterpart. Cars 2 strayed away from the previous film releases, as attached to it was the first Toy Story tune, entitled Hawaiian Vacation, which is a short that I thoroughly enjoy, though being that it utilizes existing IP, even being Pixar, it is a different vibe than what we were used to. This was kind of a one-time thing, as we got more original shorts for the next few releases, but then things sort of steered off track in 2017's second release, Coco, with a 22-minute Frozen holiday special entitled Olaf's Frozen Adventure, which was initially intended as an ABC release. I'm sure that this got some families to the theater, but it's such an insane thing looking back, and it was the first time a non-Pixar IP preluded one of their films. By this point, there'd been some Toy Story tunes and Mater's Tall Tales seen elsewhere, but perhaps with Coco they were a tad bit worried about its prospects being so tied to a specific culture. The following year we saw what is to date the last of those standard short films from the studio, with Bao releasing alongside Incredibles 2. Though I know there's still a good amount of people, such as myself, that would still like to see their return. With Toy Story 4, the film just started, and I know that's what people go to the movies for, the film itself. It probably clears up confusion for unknowing customers and perhaps makes life easier for movie theater employees. I wouldn't know myself, but I'm sure this sort of thing happened all the time. When Onward rolled out, there was a Simpsons short film attached, and I have absolutely no idea who this was for. Not that it was even bad or anything, I'm just confused why they did it. In 2019, however, we got our official, I suppose, replacement to the shorts of Pixar with the release of Spark Shorts. We got a whole lot of these in a year's time, and though they're all technically Disney Plus originals, the first 3, Smash and Grab, Pearl, and Kipple, all released for free on YouTube a good amount of time before Disney Plus even launched. But the next few were all some of the first originals the platform had to offer. The next Spark Shorts were all released very shortly after their announcements, with Out and Burrow releasing in May and December. Burrow was meant to serve as the pre-feature short film for Soul when that got its first pushback to November, and eventually it released at the same time as it on Disney Plus, so it seems like they were going to fill that void at some point, but by that point the program had already kind of fizzled out. Almost a full year later, we saw Nona and 20-something release at the same time. Accompanying them was a documentary entitled A Spark Story, which went into the process of making those two. And I'd figured this was kind of like the final hoorah for the program, but then 2.5 years later, Self came out, and that's currently the last one to date. If you're unfamiliar with this program, they are still short films produced at Pixar, though they're given to new voices at the company with a shorter window of time with smaller teams, and I believe smaller budgets than the shorts from years past. From the company themselves, they state it's almost the scale of an indie production at one of the biggest domestic studios. And with that, we saw a lot more variety in art style and tone, which was really good to see. I love seeing up-and-coming voices at the studio, as we saw many people that directed those old shorts end up at higher roles, with many directing feature films later on. Spark Shorts, while still being a lot more recent, have already led to vertical movement at Pixar for some directors, with more to surely be on the way. I wouldn't be surprised if anyone's favorite short film from Pixar is any of these Spark Shorts, and I truly appreciate a lot of the different types of stories they decided to showcase and represent amongst this batch. Though, not to sound like I'm hating or anything, they didn't always feel the most cinematic. I think this may be in part due to a greater issue and a video I'm working on right now, being the effect of Disney Plus on Pixar and the greater Walt Disney Company, but the old theatrical shorts did have a bit more polish, just having longer, sometimes multi-year development cycles, which I'm sure helped. When looking into the reasons they actually moved away from the old short system, it makes a lot of sense, considering there was an overall increase in theatrical film output seemingly without the number of employees going up a drastic amount. With Bao, there was a different set of animators brought in the weeks between features, in a development that took place over a few years, which doesn't really seem like a practical system to have in place. Luca, Turning Red, and Lightyear were all released with no short attached. The first two were obviously Disney Plus, but to my knowledge they never had any intended prior to the switch. Though Elemental saw a short film that is in the same realm as Hawaiian Vacation, with Carl's Date and Up short, which was kind of a finale to the franchise, as well as the Doug Days series of shorts. It was supposed to be on Disney Plus, announced as a release in 2022, but it was quietly moved to accompany Elemental, which I think was a good choice, likely helping to get people out to the theater. And after all we'd seen, it was good to see a short again, and being one from Pixar at that. While I mentioned Cars tunes and Toy Story tunes earlier, the presence of a franchise short is something that has been around for a good amount of time too, starting with Mike's New Car and typically showing up on home releases as bonus features. This type of production continued even after home releases fell off, with Lamp Life, 22 vs. Earth, and Ciao Alberto being Disney Plus originals. I do love these kind of shorts when they come out, though I think these kind of got set aside when feature production was ramping up alongside production on Win or Lose and short series like Doug Days. With more layoffs and a supposed move away from Disney Plus content, I do fear this entire branch of Pixar's library is at risk of discontinuing. Whether it be those original shorts, Spark Shorts, or in-universe expansions, these are such an integral part of Pixar's identity, and I'd hate to see them stopping short film production altogether. Though I do think they'll always exist to an extent, but fewer and further between, unless another Spark Short level initiative is born. While I don't think the Spark Short program was a failure by any means, creatively speaking, as it did bring new talent forward, it did fail to replace the old system because these films weren't pushed forward to be shown theatrically, though some did accompany the re-releases of Soul and Turning Red, which was good to see. I can understand why, when cutting costs, they've moved away from new original shorts, because it's not always the highest return. If anything, it might take away from total showtimes per day for a new release. But it would help in animation studios such as Pixar boost some online cred, so when they premiere their sequels every other year, they can simultaneously be showcasing up-and-coming talent, unique concepts, and different animation techniques. There's a lot to look at in the history and development of this portion of the company, but all I can say is, speaking for myself, these look and feel like quintessential Pixar to me. Elio just recently brought back something Pixar hadn't done in decades with the bloopers, even though they unfortunately weren't actually seen in the duration of the film. I don't know if this was a one-off or not, hopefully not, but I hope these charming little shorts are the next to make a return nonetheless. And I'd hope for something that can naturally meld the old school shorts program with the Spark Shorts. So moral of the story, though they haven't really gone anywhere when looking at the big picture, from the perspective of the standard moviegoer, as the title suggests, Pixar needs to bring back the short film. I truly believe this would be a big stepping stone that would return a lot of the magic to upcoming Pixar releases and help them to obtain more pop culture dominance. That does it for the video today. Thank you all for tuning in as always. Please let me know what you think of this topic as a whole and if you'd like to see a return as well. And I guess, what are some of your favorite shorts from the studio? I know there's so many to choose from. Please feel free to hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed this video at all, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.